In this video, we'll be going over IRS Notice CP523. This is a notice that you might receive if the IRS intends to terminate your installment agreement due to non-payment. This notice is referenced in the IRS Form 9465 instructions about installment agreements. Specifically, quote, that an installment agreement may be terminated if you provide materially incomplete or inaccurate information in response to an IRS request for a financial update, or if you provide such information to obtain the installment agreement. So while this may be the cause, or this notice may be issued either due to non-payment, it might also be issued due to providing misleading information, not responding to an information request from the IRS. So it's important to take a close look at what your exact notice says so that you can make sure that you're taking the appropriate action. So if you, for example, if you have a plan in place and you've been making your payments, but the IRS still sends this notice because they believe you misrepresented some information on your 9465 or one of the other forms that you may have been required to complete, then it is not enough to simply keep making payments without addressing the issue that the IRS has raised. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in this video, we're going to go through this notice, this example, and talk about, how this might be an impact to your situation. So every tax situation is a little bit different, but if you have any questions, we'll put links in the show notes to resources that we've created for some of the articles or some of the forms and schedules that we mention here. So whether you like to read the article and go step by step through the form, or whether you'd rather watch the video, we've got something for you. So as I normally do, let's take a closer look at the top right hand corner. So you see the notice number, CP523. In this particular instance, the tax period is for the 2017 tax year. The notice date is January 30th, 2019. You would also see your tax ID number as well as the phone number to call the IRS. So in this case, this is the generic IRS phone number, the 800 number. You may have an ID number that you can use to identify yourself on the phone. So I'm going to point out two things that I think are critically important. First, make sure take note of the notice date, especially in any case where the IRS says that they're going to issue a notice of intent to levy, if they're going to terminate something, if they're going to take a step that looks like it might trigger or be a part of the collections process, then you should take a particular note of the notice date. For example, it says right here, if you don't make the required payments this past due amount, we will terminate your installment agreement 30 days from the date of this notice. So in this case, no later than February 29th, 2019, the IRS would have taken some sort of action unless you either made the required payments or at least contacted the IRS and had some sort of discussion where there was an agreement that was reached. But if you do nothing, the IRS just assumes that you agree with their assessment and they're going to proceed down their path. In this case, it's taking the next step in the collections process. So item one is, please take note of the notice date. Step two is make sure that your address, whether it's your business, whether it's your home address, is up to date. So I always highlight this because many taxpayers may have changed their address. So if you ever change your address, it is very important to notify the IRS, particularly if you're in the middle of an installment agreement with the IRS. Under normal circumstances, the vast majority of taxpayers do not expect to receive IRS correspondence, but if you do, you are held accountable to this notice date. So if you recently filed your tax return and then you moved right after filing, the IRS may not know about your change of address until the next tax year when you file your next tax return with your new address on it. So you can update your records by doing that. You can also call the IRS, validate your information, and then change your address over the phone. And you can also file either IRS Form 8822, which is the official change of address form for individual taxpayers, or in this case, IRS Form 8822-B, which would be the business change of address form. We'll put links in the show notes to both of those resources, as I mentioned earlier. So I make that note in every one of these IRS notice videos because it is so much more important that you take the corrective action within the desired time frame. So in the case of this notice, that's at least 30 days from the notice date. So let's take a closer look. So notice of intent to levy, intent to terminate your installment agreement, and then payment due immediately, $300. So the billing summary usually tells the story about the overall situation. In this case, the taxpayer has over $10,800 of tax debt. That includes the actual tax, a failure to pay penalty, and then interest charges. And then right beneath this is the past due amount due. So if you looked at nothing further in this form, you would correctly come to the conclusion that I at least need to pay $300 within 30 days to keep this installment agreement on track. And that would be perfectly correct. Let's see what else is there just in case we have questions. So the IRS says this notice is also your notice of intent to levy. So if the IRS terminates your installment agreement and you exhaust your right to appeal the termination, which means you go through the appeals process and nothing comes out of it in your favor, then the IRS may seek to collect the entire unpaid tax liability, which includes taxes, penalties, and the interest, not just this $300. So they would be looking to collect the entire $10,800. So at the bottom of this, if you wanted to say, hey, you know what, let me send $300, you absolutely can. You can cut off this voucher. What you should do is make sure that if you're paying by check or money order, you make that out to the United States Treasury. You write your taxpayer ID number on the check as well, or the money order, as well as the tax year and your form number. So for most individual taxpayers, that would be IRS Form 1040. You would put that on there. Page 2 of this notice appears to be blank. Then page 3 is a continuation of this notice. So the IRS goes on to say that they may levy, which means seizing your state income tax refund, which the IRS can do, or other property or rights to property to apply the proceeds to the total amount of your unpaid debt. So what you need to do immediately, and then let's see, there's other steps such as what you need to know. So, and I just saw the payment voucher, so I want to make sure. So this is a payment voucher, and then for some reason there's also a second copy of a payment voucher right here, just in case you missed the first one. So what you need to do immediately is, if you agree with that past due amount and you're not working with a representative, you pay that past due amount, that $300, or else the IRS will terminate your agreement, and then the full amount comes due. So you can pay it online by going to the IRS website. They give you the URL here, www.irs.gov/payments. You can also call the 800 number, which there would be an actual phone number here if you needed assistance. So this would be, if you need to determine the past due amount. So if you agree with this assessment and you can't pay the past due amount, then you may be able to discuss this further with the IRS, but the IRS is going to insist on you providing a updated financial statement. So that's IRS Form 433-F, also known as the Collection Information Statement. You may have completed this the first time that you completed IRS Form 9465, but the IRS will make you update this with your new information. So the IRS may have the flexibility to help restructure your current installment agreement. If they do, then you may have to pay an additional user fee of up to $89. If you're a low-income taxpayer, then you may be able to qualify for a a lower fee, which can be then waived or reimbursed when you eventually pay off your debt. So if you disagree, you should call the IRS to talk about your account, and you would want to make sure that you have all of your tax information, prior correspondence, things of that nature, your records and all of that. You can also request an appeal, so you can either call the 800 number or send IRS Form 9423 to the address in the notice, and you would be able to go through that route to appeal your collections process. I did not mention the form number here. Low-income taxpayer, there is a definition within the IRS. So in order to decide whether or not you qualify, you may need to complete IRS Form 13844. I believe that's that is the request to either lower or reduce or eliminate your installment agreement fee. So, and there is a definition that's tied to the amount of your income versus the national poverty limitation that the federal government establishes every year. So we'll put a link in the show notes to that tax form if you're interested in lowering your fee and you believe that you may qualify as a low-income taxpayer, which is not a subjective criteria. There's actual guidelines on who qualifies and who does not based on their income and their family size. So we'll put a link in that in the show notes to that. So this is another payment voucher in case you lost the first one. There's more information about your appeal rights. If you go to IRS Publication 1660, you can go through that if you needed to. And again, the IRS assumes that if they don't hear from you, you agree with the information, whether or not you actually do. So what you need to know, your notice of levy, of intent to levy. So this is where the IRS can go through the appeals or the collections process to seize property. They can seize income that's coming in. They can seize assets from your bank accounts, your business assets, your car and your home, Social Security benefits, other payments that you may be expecting to receive. The IRS can claw some of that back. There are limitations as to how much the IRS can claw out of, say, Social Security benefits, but it definitely does not feel comfortable while you're going through that process. So denial or revocation of your U.S. passport. So this is part of a federal law that was passed in 2015, which requires the IRS to notify the State Department if you're owing significant amounts of delinquent tax debt, specifically legally enforceable federal debt of more than $52,000. So, for example, a long time ago, I had a client who came to me, one of my first big clients, and by the time we went through all of their tax paperwork, they owed over $100,000 in tax debt and interest and penalties. So they definitely would have qualified to be flagged by the State Department about their tax situation. And then the State Department then turns around and generally will not issue or renew a passport. And if you have a passport, they may revoke your current one. So again, not to put too much of a concern in your personal situation, but this is really applicable for people with high amounts of tax debt that the federal government may think would be trying to leave the country. Below this, we go over your payment options. You can go online. You can get money taken out of your checking or savings account. You can also pay by credit card in some instances, but if you do, that is processed by a third party that does charge a percentage of a fee, and it can be it might say a small fee. It can be a significant fee based on the amount of your payment. So be careful when you're making that credit card payment that you're not paying way too much money in a fee that you could have saved that money by having the money coming out of your bank account. You can also request an offer and compromise where you settle your tax debt for less than the full amount that you owe. You would need to use the IRS's offer and compromise pre-qualifier tool, which you can find on the IRS website. You can also go to the IRS website and figure out your balance due, your payment history. But again, this notice kind of gives you if you pay by this many days, then this is your balance, balance due. So keep that in mind. And again, final notice, if the IRS does not hear from you, then they're going to go ahead and start the collections process. So now we're going to get into the penalties and the breakdown of the outstanding payments. So there is a $34.98 failure to pay penalty. The IRS kind of walks through how they assess the 0.5% per month for up to 25%, so they can keep increasing this. So if you did file on time, then the penalty decreases. If for some reason you're not paying on time, and then you can have an increase in your penalty. So again, to discuss all of this, you should call that 800 number and get a little bit more information, unless you are able to just make a payment and keep the installment agreement on track. So you can also request that the IRS either remove or reduce their penalties. This is also known as abatement. You can file IRS Form 843, which requests abatement. So this claim for refund and a request for abatement on IRS Form 843. So you can even have penalties abated. However, the IRS usually will reserve the right to abate your penalty after you've paid your tax bill. And then interest charges. Interest accrues, and here's the schedule based on the dates of outstanding, debt. But basically, the IRS will update their quarterly interest rates or their interest rates on a quarterly basis, and then they'll charge the interest based on the outstanding amount of tax and penalties. If there's a penalty that's abated, if there's a tax that is somehow taken off the books, the IRS will then go back and recalculate interest that you shouldn't have had to pay, and then they'll apply that payment towards something else in your tax record. So they do this behind the scenes where it's not as obvious to you. In this case, it would be worth kind of making sure that you're on top of it, having a conversation with the IRS to make sure that you understand if you had penalties abated or the the interest, like reallocated, like how that works. And then there's additional information. For example, there's the IRS link, which we can go to. This is the CP523. And again, there's a little bit of information about whether or not you're, like what happens to your passport, what you should be doing, when you should do it, what happens if you don't do anything. So there's frequently asked questions. So the IRS does a pretty good job of laying this out here, but there's not a whole lot of additional information that you're not already receiving in this notice. So we're going to go back to the notice, and then we're going to go back to that page where we were, which I believe is page 9. So there's other resources such as the publications. You can review what the collections process is, what your collection appeal rights are. You can also contact the Taxpayer Advocate Service. That's an independent organization within the IRS that helps protect taxpayer rights. So they are often busy, but if you do qualify, then their service is free. And then on the back, for certain low-income taxpayers, you may also have access to what's known as a low-income taxpayer clinic, where they would actually help you walk through your tax situation. So that's all we have for IRS Notice CP 523. As I mentioned, we'll put links in the show notes to articles and videos that we've created for some of the forms mentioned in this video. So if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. And if you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions or comments, or if there's another topic that you'd like to see in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.